Hi there. Welcome to the Health Analytic Insights podcast. This podcast is all about creating a community of like-minded individuals who are passionate about the field of health informatics. I hope to share information and advice in topics such as health analytics, digital health, biomedical engineering, and data visualization in healthcare. And in exchange, I would love to hear from you, dear listener, about your experience and interest in this field. You can drop me a line at healthanaliticinsights@gmail.com, and this email, along with any references discussed during this podcast, will be listed in the show notes below. If this resonates with you, don't forget to follow and subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be releasing new episodes bi-weekly. So on this episode of the Health Analytic Insights podcast, I'm so honored to interview Jennifer Lewis, who's a YouTube creator of the channel The Informatics Life, where she talks all about nursing informatics and health informatics and draws on her wealth of experience as a nursing informatics professional. So Jennifer, can you just tell the listeners a bit about yourself?
Sure. I have been in the nursing field for over going on 16 years now. And I embarked on this journey about 8 years ago, getting into nursing informatics. So I was a bedside nurse for about 9 years at a particular hospital, and I was actually never heard of the field. I never even heard of anything, but I was just a tech person on the floor. Like anytime someone needed extra help on documentation or they needed the VCR fix, yes, I'm dating myself. We had VCRs back in the days, and they were like, "Hey, Jen, you'll help out," or any other type of technical thing. I was the go-to person. So I do have a love for technology, of course. That's why I'm in the field. So I transitioned, like I said, about 8 years ago into nursing informatics. I was totally didn't know anything about it. But one thing about informatics, they do teach you a lot because everyone has different systems. So that it really is my main background. If you want to go more into nursing, it was oncology. I did bone marrow transplant nursing for the 9 years, and before that was med surg. So I just really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the bedside. And then transitioned to informatics, I grew to love it tremendously, and I will definitely say I love the field.
Awesome.
I think that is great to have challenges. And informatics does bring those challenges and accomplishments that I love to feel as I'm doing my nursing care. I'm just doing it in a different way, I should say.
Right. That's a similar pathway to me. Like growing up, I only really knew about if you wanted to work in the healthcare field, be a nurse or be a doctor. My background is in biomedical engineering, right? So I've always really loved the technology aspect of the clinical side. I didn't really want to, be like a nurse or a doctor, but I wanted to really still work in the healthcare field and have that technology piece. So it wasn't until later on that I learned about health informatics, and I had to learn. It's not something that I was introduced to, growing up. So it's just through research. So it's great that you have this YouTube platform to really teach people about, another career that you can go into in the healthcare field if you want to do something more in the technical space.
Yes.
That's really awesome.
And I would like to add to that a lot of people still aren't. Informatics differs wherever you go. So a lot of people aren't even still aware of nursing informatics, because that you usually get the response of, what is that? When you say nursing informatics or health informatics. So that always goes to having to explain what you do for a living.
And with that, I find that there's some confusion with job titles specifically in the field. You can be a clinical decision support analyst. You can be a clinical specialist. There's so many different job titles that it can be confusing for people to kind of navigate if they want to work into health informatics. So I hope that as the field, transitions more, it'll be clearer in terms of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, coming into this side of the nursing field, I was actually shocked that there were so many nurses on this side already. I was like, the executive of IT is a nurse.
Oh, wow.
These senior managers and executive directors are nurses. I had no clue. And it was pretty cool, though. I would have to say it was pretty cool to find out that all these registered nurses were working in these IT fields, and how long they had been on that side. They've been there for years. It's just they didn't call it informatics back then.
That is a really, really good point. Like people have already
Yeah.
been in the position. And along the
Mhm.
same lines, in your opinion, what are some really important skills that you took from your experience first as a nurse to kind of transition into nursing informatics?
Oh, great question. Great question. A lot of people, I know that it's a habit or an idea, a popular idea for people to, oh, I'm just going to go get my associates and my bachelor's, and my master's, and then I'm going to work directly into informatics or whatever.
Mhm.
That is not a good idea. You really do need nursing science skills. You have to, what we do make a lot of decisions. Now, we do collaborate with bedside nurses and medical staff, whether it's physicians, whether it's sonographers, or whether it's x-ray techs. We do collaborate with them, but it is so important that you have that nursing science skill. Like, you know what it's like to take care of a patient bedside. You understand the workflows of
Right.
medical staff, because a lot of people, like I said, they want to get in so quickly, but most nursing informatics or health informatics specialist jobs will state, not all, most will state that you need some type of medical experience,
Right.
because that's a part of what we do for a living.
Mhm.
Although we collaborate with other people, sometimes it is just my brain that's making these decisions. And if I don't have that nursing science background or that bedside care, it's going to be very challenging for me to make those decisions.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great that shine light on that so people can
Mhm.
understand like this is an area that they need to reach. So making sure they have
Yes.
that nursing science background if they want to, really be successful in the
Mhm.
field for sure.
Yeah,
And
and also too, like if it's health informatics or nursing informatics, they typically require 2 to 3 years. I just want to put
yes,
that plug in
yeah, yeah.
there.
That's definitely like for me, I wasn't able to get straight into the field. I had to get that experience first,
Yes.
get those technical skills, and then I
Mhm.
was able to transition into, health informatics. But yeah, it's definitely very important when you're dealing with patients and health
Mhm.
outcomes. They want to make sure that you have the necessary experience to actually be very effective in the field. So that definitely makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to nurses, right now who want to transition into the
Mhm.
field? Like what soft skills specifically or technical skills would you want them to know about?
All right. Well, let me go into again the bedside care, because I think a lot of people, they just want to jump into the field. I always highly recommend people become super users on the floor. Be that tech
Mm,
person. Be that person that people go to. If you're in
right.
health informatics and you work at a different company, be the go-to person.
Mhm.
Or I should say respiratory, if you're respiratory care, or if you're again x-ray technician, or you're like, I want to get into informatics, do your best to learn the documentation systems, learn the ins and out of it, become the charge nurse, become the supervisor or A&M or manager, something to show leadership skills.
Mhm.
This part of IT informatics, we're pretty much leaders. We meet with executives, we meet with leaders, and yeah, I'm in management, but my team members, other analysts, we meet with those people all the time. So
Right.
if you're coming in, we just say, we look at that resume, we say, have you been a preceptor? We teach a lot on this end. You teach a lot of technology.
Mhm.
So if you don't have any type of teaching experience,
Mhm.
or leadership experience, it's going to be hard for us to gauge, would you be good at leading out on a meeting? Would you be good at collaborating with different people, to come to a conclusion about some documentation changes?
Right.
So, super user, preceptor, if you're maybe have educator experience, maybe you have just anything that shines light that you would make a good leader,
Mhm.
and that you can work autonomously, because a lot of informatics specialists work autonomously. And of course, bedside care, that might be challenging because you do have a collective amount of people, but maybe initiating some changes on your unit. Maybe you see that people aren't documenting their IVs appropriately,
Mhm.
and coming up with a solution for that. And then you can put that on your resume. Hey, I did this and I came up with these ideas. Then if you want to go into the technical side, again, we train coming from the floor. Let me tell you, there is just a lot you don't know. You
Okay.
think you know, but you don't know. So we train heavily And I'm just speaking for nursing informatics right now. We train heavily because there is just so much you have to learn, because there's a lot of back ends of the documentation system that you don't even have access to.
Right.
You know, like something like our smart auditor machine that we have that actually video records nurses documenting. A lot of people don't even realize that systems do that. Like it's as though we're watching you document. We have a whole video recording of everything you do in the CHARI system. So those type of things you have to learn, and we have to teach you how to navigate through that. And then again, if you want to go into a more technical, Microsoft Office, PowerPoint, Excel. Right now, I'm living and breathing spreadsheets. I'm working on a project right now.
Oh, good luck.
You don't have to be experts, but you have to have some type of idea of Excel. Microsoft, knowing how to use Microsoft Office, some things will come. More technical skills besides the documentation, that's why we say 2 to 3 years with that too, because you need to know the documentation system very well, because that's what you're going to be managing as an informatics specialist. But also sometimes people forget about certain things like tools, like maybe the glucometer that the nurses use on the floor. Sometimes we might have projects with that we have to engage certain people. There's different applications that nurses use throughout their workday. And we manage those things. So if you're on the floor at any site, just make sure you are familiarizing yourself with every application that the nurses use. And because there might be a chance that you might have to troubleshoot. We're on call 24/7. Nurses call us, and we have to be there to walk them through whatever technology. And if you're clueless about that technology, that's going to be really challenging for you to help them out. So.
No, that's really great advice. And I like what you said about kind of taking initiative and seeing within your own organization what projects and what pitfalls you could look at. I think that one of the benefits of being in your own clinical organization is that you could even go to the IT department or the clinical decision support department and even maybe job shadow them, or, ask them like, what would someone who is taking this job, like what would be the job description requirements for that, right? So, I mean, you have an advantage if you're already in the organization to kind of transition directly.
Yes, you said it so wonderfully. Go talk to people. If you're interested in an informatics specialist job at your site, go talk to someone. Go say, like you just said, find out what they're looking for and become that. A lot of people want to shy away, and it takes time on your end to build yourself, to build value that people will look at you and say, hey, you took that initiative on your floor by yourself. I like that. Hey, can I have an interview with you? In one of my videos, I explained that. I said, I took initiative to solve just lack of communication between day shift and night shift. I put together these forms. It was paper forms back then that, pretty much checkoffs for each shift, because I got tired of people saying, oh, I thought they did it. They didn't do it. And so we collaborated, we got together, we made all these forms for the charge nurse, RN, and for the PCTs, patient care tags. And I collaborated, and guess what I did with all those forms when I went to get interviewed for informatics? I brought them with me, because that was something I did as an initiative on my own. No one paid me extra. Got to sew into yourself. No one paid me extra, but to this day, believe it or not, I still see those things floating around the units after 8 years. After 8 years, I'm just like, do you need another copy? Because that is so faded.
It shows that your impact. Exactly. And I think that, some people might prefer to do like online courses, but I think that there's a lot of value in actually going within your organization and seeing what value you can actually give to them. And another question I kind of had is, what has been some of the significant differences from your time as a nurse versus your day-to-day as a nursing informatics professional? Is it kind of similar? Or is it completely different? Can you talk about that?
Of course. The top one is I don't work 12-hour shifts anymore. That was a part of the reason why I did transition to informatics, just because I have kids. Well, my kids are older now, but just having to work weekends, having to work holidays, you have to like negotiate with people to get certain holidays off.
Mhm.
So that's a big difference. I work 5 days a week, 8 to 5. I would have to say, like, I had so much when I transitioned, I didn't realize how much energy I could have. Because, on the floor, you're so worn out. I'm not going to even sugarcoat it.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're so tired. So that is one, like, in your face difference. I work 8 to 5 pretty much Monday through Friday, but I like it. I see my kids in the morning. I see them after. I have energy, blah, blah, blah. So
Mhm.
that's good. Also, patient care, of course, obvious. I don't really interact with patients anymore, but I interact with so many amazing medical staff members. And so I know that my decisions that I make as an informatics specialist, that's going to impact millions of patients. Eventually, it's going to get to millions of patients.
Right.
And that is, I think the weight of that is more significant because when you're on the floor, you're actually just taking care of 1 to 3 to 5 to 8 patients, and that's it. And amazing work. Thank you, nurses. I love y'all out there. When you're on this end in informatics, you're actually making these super important documentation changes. You're actually making decisions on technology. So with that being said, I always feel a weight of, okay, am I making this right decision for all these amazing medical staff, which is for my hospital, it's like over 15,000 nurses. And I'm like, I'm about to change this is DTAs, nomenclatures, because you have to learn the IT language on this end too.
Mhm.
And, I'm so cautious because I don't want to add another task. I don't want to make it difficult. I have to think like a GN. I have to think like an international nurse. I have to think like a young or older nurse. I have to think like everyone when you're on this end because those decisions I make, I have to read it to make sure everyone's going to understand it. There won't be any confusion.
Mhm.
So again, it's not a life or death situation like coding, but like my documentation could cause a patient to get harmed. My documentation is not just impacting one person, it's impacting thousands of nurses at one time.
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
so I think there is just this weight that you have of responsibility on this end. And we're nurses, we're nurse liaisons, we're nurse advocates. We fight for them. We do have physicians informatics, surgical informatics. We have all these other teams that
Mhm.
take care of those group of nurses. But for mine, we take care of emergency department nurses and inpatient nurses. So that weight is heavy on this end. And I'm not saying that it's easier because I know it's not easy out there bedside. It's just a difference. It is different stressors. We have deadlines that we have to meet. So if executives want this in at a certain time, government wants this in at a certain time, regulatory wants this in at a certain time.
Mhm.
So we have pressure. There's
Yeah.
pressure over here.
Mhm.
So we and then you have to make meetings. You have to make sure everyone comes to the
All the
meeting.
meetings.
Oh my gosh. So it is different. There is definitely a lot of difference, but
Mhm.
I still love it.
Yeah, and I love what you said about, having to put on different hats when it comes to
Yes.
designing different, technological projects. Because I think
Mhm.
back to like, the first iterations of the EMR or EHR, where there wasn't really too much, clinician input. And we're seeing so many
Mhm.
studies of clinicians burning out from all this data entry that they have to do as a part
Uh-huh.
of, they have so much to do in their day-to-day job. And then they have all this data entry to also do on top of it. It's really pushing people
Mhm.
away from the field. So I
Yes.
think if you're like a health informaticist or a nursing informaticist and you have that experience, being on the
Mhm.
other side and entering in all this data, you're going to build technological projects that are actually designed with the clinician and the patient in
Yes.
mind. So I think that is a
Mhm.
really, really wonderful field to be in, especially
Mhm.
when we are considering the future. And that's actually my final question for you. Where do you
Mhm.
hope to see the field of nursing informatics go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh. Okay, I've been in about 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
In 5 to 10 years, I think I would love to see the field expand.
Mhm.
We do implement a lot of technology, and a lot of my system is about to convert to a whole new documentation system surprise for me that they decided about a year and a half ago. So I would like to see more maintenance. So when we implement something,
Mhm.
and I think that this is going to require more nurse engagement, more informatics specialists being hired. I really think it's so super important that we're that support on the floor, more so on the floor, more so engaged in them to make sure that they continue using the technology. I totally understand like tasks. I I cringe at the word tasks. Those tasks can be overwhelming. I think that I would love to see tasks get not eliminated completely. I understand they're required sometimes, but I'm hoping to see those go down. And there's more informatics specialists just to help with nursing workflows, to help make those decisions based on any type of technology. Executives more engaged on the floor to see the burden of the nurses, because
Right.
yeah, documentation can be overloaded sometimes.
Mhm.
And I get it. I 100% get it. I'm always like, no, don't put the task. No, don't add that to nurses. No, because they're so
Thanks so
already so
much. Yeah.
overwhelmed. So I would like to see more influence on the floor for less documentation changes, less documentation for nurses, and more so that personal whole person care for the patient.
Mhm.
I understand that certain documentation is going to just be needed,
Mhm.
but I think lowering the nurse to patient ratio, improving the technology to make it work better in the workflow,
Mhm.
diminishing the amount of tasks, and put the nurse in front of the patient more. I would love to see that. And I know it's going to take a lot of informatics specialists to help make that happen.
Mhm.
But also, as I was saying, as technology does come more, just more support on the floors from informatics nurse specialists to whether it's health informatics specialists or nurse informatics specialists, just to listen, just to listen to the nurses, to hear what they have to say, and then change it based on what they say collectively. Again, I understand the need of certain things, but sometimes I don't know if a lot of people understand the collective pile on of issues and responsibilities of those nurses out there.
Mhm.
So a couple of things I would like to see. And it again, it require more informatics specialists out there just to be there for the nurses, to review over documentation, maybe teach some shortcuts and just to improve that workflow, you know.
Yeah, that makes so much
So
sense. I'm sure, nurses and doctors did not go into the profession to do documentation and data entry. Their main
yes.
focus is to work with the patient. And I think
Yes,
health
exactly.
informatics can really help be that push to kind of reduce some of that excess documentation on them. So I totally hope to see your dream, progress in the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being on the
Welcome.
podcast. I learned so much from this interview.
Well,
And
good.
where can my audience learn more about you?
Well, you can check out my YouTube channel, Informatics Life. I serve health informatics specialists as well as nursing informatics specialists. I teach you real world informatics, and I'm going to start implementing more leadership because I am in leadership. I've been in leadership for a long time. I want to teach you how to, if you want to get elevated, let me teach you that as well. Some people want to be chief informatics officer. I'm
Mhm.
not there. I don't know if I'll be there, but I can give you some really cool tips on how to get there. So just check out my YouTube. I also have Facebook as well. And I just post videos from YouTube on there. So you can just go ahead and subscribe on YouTube.
I'm really looking forward to those videos. That's gonna be
Yes.
awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, have a good rest of the day and thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Health Analytic Insights podcast. I'd love to hear from you about topics I should cover in future episodes. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Have a wonderful day.